If you want to improve your chess, you need to improve the way you think. There are certain mindsets that every strong chess player has. These are the mindset shifts that I made when I got to 2000 on chess.com Rapid. And in this video, I'm going to share the 7 mindset shifts that you can make right now to improve your play. My name's Nathan Rose. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. I do all kinds of great content on chess. And with that, let's get into the list. Number 1, learn to think like your opponent. This is so crucial. You really can't become a strong chess player if you don't get into the habit of always be thinking what your opponent is trying to do, and then if you need to, taking countermeasures against it. Here, for example, White's got some pressure against f7. White's got 1, 2, 3 attackers, and Black's only got 2 defenders. It's actually Black to move here though, and Black plays knight takes d4, and I think many lower rated players, or even higher rated players if they're not paying attention, could just follow through with their own plan. Knight takes f7. The problem with this is that it failed to see what Black's threat was, and here Black would of course play knight e2 check, forking the king and the queen, and White can resign. If you're newer to chess, this is hard to do. Like, you're going to find it difficult to accurately know what your opponent is up to all the time, but it's still very important to try. And then even if you get it wrong, you can review afterwards and try and improve for next time. But it starts with the mindset of always thinking, what is your opponent going to do if they had another move? A more advanced example. This position is from Nimzowitsch versus Capablanca, 1914. It's Black to move here and try and get inside the mindset of White. What is White going to do if White had one more move? Here's a hint. Try and think what White's problem is and what White would like to do to try and solve that problem. So White's problem is the a4 pawn. Black has the threat of taking the knight and then taking the pawn. So if it were White's move, White would like to play b3, reinforcing the a4 pawn. But it's not White to move, it's Black to move, and here Black played queen c4, cutting across that plan. Now b3 is not possible because the knight would be lost. So White ended up losing a pawn, and Black eventually won the game. But it all started from recognizing what the opponent's plan was, getting inside their mind, and then taking measures against what the opponent was trying to do. Number 2, always consider your opponent's best reply. This position is from Polgar versus Burks, and it's Black to move here. White is offered a piece sacrifice, which Black goes ahead and accepts. Now I think the plan is pretty clear here. You want to open up against the newly exposed Black king. But if you try and do it right away with a move like h4, then that's not considering your opponent's best reply. Black would look to close the position with g4. Expecting that Black's going to be so compliant and allow you to take this pawn or to take care of themselves is just far too optimistic. All kinds of moves that White can play here, it's just going to be lights out for Black in pretty short order. So Black's not going to do that. Black's not going to go along with your plan. So instead, back here, after the knight has been taken, what Polgar played first was instead g4, which allows h4 on the next move, but without allowing Black to play the g4 reply. So having the right ideas in chess is one thing, but the right execution is just as important. Tip number 3, pay attention to every forcing move of your opponents. A forcing move is a check, a capture, or a threat. And this position comes from one of my own games where I failed to do this, Rose versus Pantoglu 2024. I've got white, and I decided to capture on b7 here. What I expected was rook to b8, after which I was calculating queen takes a6, and then after the queen trade, black takes on b2. So in this line, I've won a pawn, but black's got this active rook on the second rank. I was spending quite a bit of time working out whether the extra material that I'd gained would be worth the positional concession of black getting an active piece. But I had failed to consider another move that black could have played, another forcing move, which I should have seen, which is the simple e5. That's a forcing move, that's a threat, that's attacking the knight. And the problem is, if the knight moves away, then the bishop is lost. I found myself down a piece. I kept playing, but it wasn't much of a game after that. So, learn from my mistake. Always pay attention to every forcing move that is in the position. Tip number 4, respond to threats with bigger threats. Wang versus Gerber, 2016, and the position is extremely sharp. White is offered to sacrifice a piece on g6, and we've got opposite side castles, and black continues the pressure with b4. And this is a situation where you can tell the difference between a strong chess player and someone who's lower rated. A lower rated player may look to respond to the threat directly with a move such as knight to e2. But in such a critical position, this is the wrong way to play. Black can capture the bishop on g6 now, introducing a threat against the c2 pawn. Black can also consider opening up the white king side. White's position has gone from winning to losing. That's why, instead, after b4, Wang didn't respond to this threat, but instead created a bigger threat of his own with rook to h7. Now if black follows through with the threat of taking the knight, then there's a forced sequence which leads to checkmate, starting with bishop takes f7. If king takes h7, for example, then it's a fairly long sequence, but this is what it takes at this level to navigate such complex positions. That's a checkmate. Now for an example from another one of my own games. Here we've got Rose versus Bullet 2024. Black's got some pressure against e4. But instead of responding to that pressure, what I should have done, which I didn't do in the game, was continued with the pressure that I've got against the black king. I should have played rook d to h1. And now if black follows through with the threat of capturing, then I can continue with my own threats. I'm not backing down. Let's say that black takes the knight. Well, again, calculation is key in such positions. I can actually force checkmate with this queen sacrifice, and after the forcing sequence, that's a checkmate. It's essential to play this way, especially when the position is razor sharp. You have to calculate. You don't want to respond to threats directly. Instead, you want to create bigger threats of your own. Tip number 5 is to be on the lookout for the most annoying moves. Our model game here is Lipnitsky versus Smyslov, 1951. And we can use some of the earlier tips we've already looked at to think of what the most annoying move could be with black to play. So let's imagine that you're white here. What would white like to do? Well, if I had the white pieces, I'd be wanting to play e3, move the bishop out, and get castled. Pretty simple plan. And it's for this reason that black played bishop b5, which is very annoying, because now if you play e3, then black will capture here, and whichever way you capture back, white's going to lose the ability to castle kingside. It turns out that after bishop to b5, white does have a way of getting castled, and it involves the following plan. White plays g3, and let's say that black castles. Okay, so bishop g2. Now black tries to maintain this pressure. If white were to castle, then that pawn would be lost. But here white could play bishop to f3 and get castled next move. That's the way to do it, but it's not at all certain that a human is going to find all of that. And Lipnitsky didn't. After bishop b5, he instead went h4. Black simply castled, and later in the game, White ended up getting into severe king safety trouble. White never got castled, all because of this annoying move that Smyslov had played earlier. Tip number 6 is to tie the opponent down to passive defense and to do everything you can to avoid going passive yourself. This becomes more and more important as you get higher and higher in chess ratings. Stronger chess players look to prize activity even above material. So our model game here is Urva versus Reshevsky 1948. And here Black plays knight to b6, targeting this weak pawn on c4. So if before you didn't understand what I meant by being active or being passive, this white rook is very passive now. It can't move. It's tied to the defense of the c4 pawn. Ideally, White would like to be able to move his rooks over to contest this open d file, but with the rook stuck here, White can't do that. Black is going to have total dominance over the open d file and gain an overwhelming positional advantage, all because of the fact that this rook is forced into passive defense. The next example of this is from Firouzja versus Gukesh 2024. So White has an extra knight, but Black has some pawns as compensation, and this pawn in particular looks very scary. I think many players here would see this pawn marching down the board and play rook a3, stopping the pawn's advance directly. But, as we just saw, that is a very passive move. Black could capture on e5, and okay, White could capture back, but with 2 pawns versus 5, I think Black is having all the fun in this position. And that's why back in the starting position, White didn't play rook a3, and instead played knight to d7, avoiding passive defense. The idea is that if Black goes ahead and plays a3, then White had calculated that he can actually take this pawn, and Black can't take back. Why? Well, there's a checkmating pattern here. It starts with rook to c8 check. The king is forced to go to h7. Now knight to f8 check means that the king has to go back to either g8 or h8. Let's say it goes to h8. Then this is mate. It takes calculation to see all of this, but it's the right way to play. It's the right way to play because it avoids passive defense. The final tip is, if it works, it works. James Canty, who's a popular chess streamer, calls this calculation over everything. This is a position which arose in one of my online games, and Black played knight takes c2. So this looks very scary, right? I've got this discovered attack against my king. The knight could move out of the way in lots of different ways, and for this reason I captured back. And this would have allowed Black the ability to close up the king side, and now my attack is much harder to get going. But this is very surprising, I have to say, but actually White can capture on g7 and allow a discovered attack. You need to do calculation in order to believe this, but let's say knight to a3, then after king d2, and surprisingly Black doesn't have any more immediate threats, and White does have an immediate threat, that of checkmate. The other knight jump doesn't really work either, just after king b1, and White is fine, and again this threat is unstoppable. So calculation over everything. You've got to keep working on your tactics, keep solving those puzzles, because it comes in so handy in these critical positions. If you found this video valuable, it'd be great if you could show your appreciation by dropping a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this one, and do drop a comment down below. Which was your favourite tip? I'd love to hear from you. My name's Nathan Rose. Good luck with those. Bye for now.